So, at the start of the match, at the start of the season, we create a scouting sheet based on how well robots do certain tasks. And the game analysis improves after we see actual matches and we see where points actually come from. And we use numbers to keep picks as objective as possible. And criteria constantly evolve throughout the season. So on the scouting sheet, you have one big box that represents a team.
How many matches is on that?
On this one sheet, I have a total of 4 matches for one person. Actually, yeah. Really 2. It depends on how many scouts. And so for each box, you have separated autonomous and teleon. And you can see everything is assigned a number value. So you see before every part of or every criteria, there's a number value. So autonomous is pretty straightforward. Intentionally interfered would be actually driving over and messing with another robot instead of scoring. The reliability, didn't run would mean it didn't move at all during the match. Ran some could mean either they cut out in the middle of the match, or they weren't actually doing anything. They were just maybe driving in circles or driving around the edges of the field. And ran would be actually doing things the entire time. Another point that we kind of had to define later was the defense. If they didn't play defense, they're not always weak or light. You have to look at the robot and based on how they drive it and the drivetrain, say whether you think they were a robot that can block other robots or push other.
So as a coach, I'm going to jump in and tell a couple quick things about what happened last season. At our first championship tournament, we did scouting like this with objective numbers, and then we got together and so the scouting team met with the drive team, and we talked and talked and talked, and as a drive team, we were really afraid of one particular robot and decided that we wanted them on our team, even though they hadn't scored that high in the scouting. Guess what happened? We got beat by robots that scored higher in the scouting. So we came to our next tournament, our scouts did their job again, and as a drive team we said, you guys make the call, you know better than we do. And they picked us really good partners and we won. When we got to Worlds, we were the #1 seed. Our first pick was the 17th seed. People were like, you know, we saw number 3 pick number 4, number 2 pick maybe 2 pick 3, and 4 pick 6. I mean, we picked 17th and 15th. Why? Because our scouts said they were our first 2 choices, and nobody else knew about them. We got the 2 best robots on the field as our partners. That's why we won at Worlds. Our scouting was a huge part of that. It was originally a role that not everybody thought would be a great spot to have on the team. But I think Evan appreciates it a whole lot more than he did before. And Joey is now scouting for his FRC team also. Why? Because we know how to scout, and scouting picks your partners. You're only half a team. You can get the best partner, huge deal.
Question? It sounds like you were using your scouting just for the end. Were you able to assimilate it earlier if you had a match against or a match with one of those partners? Using the paper, were you able to assimilate it fast enough?
Yeah. The system we had is we had the, that actually works really well. So this is we have separate sheets that we call our summary sheets. And so these show kind of the summary of all of their matches when we have it, as well as things just about the robot comments we've seen.
I have 2 questions. One, how did you assign weighted values? How did you go about assigning weighted values to your sheet? And then secondly, did you sample every match, every robot, or did you decide, okay, we're not even going to pay attention to this one because it's just square lot?
I'll answer the second question first. Most tournaments, we'd watch every match, scout every robot, until maybe 2 or 3 matches before we had to pick. And at that point, we take our summaries and go pick our robots. As for weighting, we take all the numbers and we use an Excel spreadsheet to calculate everything for us. They rate all the robots, and we would just see how well people were rated. To weight it, we made each part even. So the offense was just as good as defense, which was just as good as reliability. And each one of the 3 criteria was weighted, I want to say 10 points overall.
Yeah, and that evolved over the course of the season as we saw what was important. Originally, for example, on reliability, it was 0 if you broke down, and then 2 if it was partial. We finally started actually giving negative points for the
Okay.
breakdown.
So that was just trial and error.
More important. It turns out it's way more important to have a partner that's running with you than to be off there by yourself.
So reliability kept growing in importance for
Yeah,
us.
and so the points got bigger and bigger for that.
The waiting for lifting another robot kept going down and down because, while they're lifting, 2 robots are out of action.
And the other 2 robots on the other team are putting rings up.
Probably uninhibited.
I was the main scout, and then I usually had a lot of the parents helping me.
So Evan is so with only 4 kids last year, we had to have 3 at the field, so Evan was doing, he would explain this to parents that didn't really understand. We have partnered with other teams several times. Like if we're going to a tournament, we'll say, hey, Patronos. Well, especially at Worlds. At Worlds, we have a long history with the Landroids. Any of you guys know the Landroids? Team from New Jersey. So we talked to them ahead of time, said, we're going to do really thorough scouting. We see you're in Edison, we're in Franklin. We will agree before the tournament even starts that we will scout Franklin and share all of our scouting with you. You scout Edison, share all of your scouting with us. And should we not end up head-to-head, we will give each other consultation. So when they lost in the semifinals, the Landroids walked over and said, here's what to expect from the teams you're facing. And we had agreed to that before we ever walked into Worlds. We took Skip's team, EMC Squared, came to a tournament with us. They were a brand new team, and same kind of a deal. They had lots of manpower, we had some knowledge, and we said, hey, let's partner up. I'll add one more element we threw in there. We would say, if we were partnering with Got Robot, we'd say, okay, one of the agreements is, as partnering together on this stuff, we clearly learn extra things about each other. We expect you to use that against us, but we expect you not to share that with anybody else. You can use it to your own game, and we will agree to treat you likewise. We will learn everything we know about you to try to beat you, but we won't tell anybody else what we learn via partnering. And so again, partnering with other teams has been huge.
It's also really important. I found later in the season that our scouting sheet was so simple because there's just a few points you can explain and then they're off and rolling, which makes it a lot easier to recruit help or parents to help us scout. And then I also mentioned it's all in an Excel spreadsheet. It just makes things a lot quicker than having to copy things over in paper or find paper copies.
And quite frankly, the math of, very simple mathematical analysis and getting the subjectivity out of it has generally paid off for us. We learned it the hard way, but we're very trusting now of the numeric analysis that our scouts walk out to us with.
Can you give an example of the bad luck? Was it like lose connection or things like that, or just maybe bad partner?
We don't, but
For the most part, the bad luck is things like where your other robot doesn't run. So if you're just scouting the outcome of the match, you see, man, this robot didn't do so well because they scored low. But then if you go through and see, oh, it's only because this robot broke down. This is still a good robot, but it had no health.
So by scouting the robot, if they broke down, that's a problem.
They get a minus.
It's all related to their partner. What did their partner do? So you scout the one robot, you don't worry about the outcome of the match, you scout it on those criteria. For this game, what different criteria this year?